I guess it's pretty easy for me, or not easy for me, but easy in regards to me, um, that this placement of like, the biggest problem, like whatever the problem is, it's always easy to blame me first. I think when I'm, if I'm there to something I'm involved with, like, and not denying that the the possibility or the likelihood that I am somewhat of a problem, or pose some sort of problem to other people's lives. I think we all do that. Everybody's going to pose problems in other people's life. Like, that's how we learn. There's something that is wrong. We don't know what's wrong. What is it? It's this. It's everything externally. It's not myself. And, I mean, I think anybody can relate to that on the sense that, if they've seen their parents get divorced, or seen their parents, or never seen both their parents in the same room together, or like, oh, I'm the problem here. Like, my existence has ruined other people's lives. It's like, that's pretty standard teenage angst stuff right there, which I love. Don't get me wrong, but it comes to a point of, well, that kid that can see that, if that's the case, it was for me, that kid's not going to understand or learn as effectively how to stand up for themselves in their own world, in their reality. It's a self-worth thing at first, and so I find myself at the eternal finish line, as I like to call it, but here in this part of life, to say, well, what is the fine line between standing up for myself and acting out of ego? Because I think that oddly enough, they come from the same source, internally. It creates the back and forth, like, oh, well, I stood up for myself in this way, and it didn't really come through as I like, or I didn't. And so, what's the point of doing it next time? Because nobody else is going to understand, and it's this whole cycle of just, why even bother? Why try? Why do anything? Right? And so, I think I'm feeling like I want to say a perspective switch on that part of the psyche, really. That's maybe what I'm speaking to now. Is at least in my perspective, I see the same kid without the skills to stand up for themselves, attempting to stand up to its own ego and make any decision for the right reason. I think people decide to do things, they take action, and those actions can be perceived as, oh, that was the right or wrong thing to do. Well, that's a given, because that's what people do. We create duality. But beyond that, it's in conquering that, I find the balance of ego and self-worth. It's the ability to almost do nothing. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's to just be, to just find yourself existing. But the intention and the reason why you do nothing, that's what makes the extreme difference between being genuine and authentic and standing up for yourself in a positive manner, and acting out of ego, taking things personally, being defensive, or outright rejecting the possibility that in yourself, you are the problem that you perceive. And that's really it. I think it's a delicacy. It's not going through the doorway, but sitting in it and being able to look back and forth and connect the two in a way that they do not want to connect in. Like, your ego wants to be right all the time. The authentic part of you wants to be wrong all the time because of, the scope of reality. That's at least how it works for me. And in the middle of that seems to be, well, there's no right or wrong. There's no, because it's just due, and it's the place that you're moving from. That's kind of where I find myself balanced. That I personally can It seems, in psychology is always like, oh, an example, give an example, because it's so hard to talk about, but like, so an example. Or, you know what? No, I'm just going to talk about a little more. It's the dynamics of a single person, so multifaceted. If, so just starting off, it's like approaching something and conversation between somebody else. That means one person and another that are totally different, approaching what could be or could not be the same thing. So if they're approaching the same thing but see it differently, they could still disagree. They're going after the same thing, but they approach it differently, and so they disagree over the minute details of syntax or semantics. And then they agree so much that it's a disagreement, and then they end up in this back and forth of, trying to figure out a problem that's not really there, because the approach initially was that both sides wanted each other to see their side to the fullest extent, as to say, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And that's the limitation that comes out of that, is that, well, because both sides weren't willing to kind of compromise or put ego aside and approaching this perceived topic or concept or whatever, that's how it gets balanced, is that both sides are neither right nor wrong, and that an opportunity was missed. That typically seems to be the consequence of ego, is that an opportunity is missed. Its effect would be exactly the inverse of what it would have been had it not been limited. However, when, say, two people are both approaching different things, so instead of two people going after the same thing in one line, if you would like to think of it like that, now two people who are on opposite sides, they come at different goals or ideas, concepts. They come at it, and they are not in doing that, they're not moving in relation to each other, they're doing it in relation to the thing, because they're both going to different things, and they know they're going to different things, but can go to the different things or attract these different things in totally different manners, yet come to the same conclusion. That's pretty magical. That means that two people were in alignment with themselves and moving totally, genuinely in the right ways in order to come to the same conclusion, absolutely independent of one another. That's like, wow. And then they may not even ever get to talk about it. They may not even know or whatever until years later you're like, oh wow, that research was being done across the world too. Or wow, this, the product or whatever I was making, or the website, or this strain of whatever vegetable. It's like, oh, well, that's occurred multiple times now, because more than once has somebody been genuine, authentic to themselves and gone their course of path to reach those conclusions. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's truly fascinating. I think it's very difficult to do for oneself, right? Not even the totality of it, like, because that's like, the universe. How does that shit work? Like, but to just do it in the moment, just be there. Like, that's a pretty spectacular feat, I think, for anybody. And maybe because it's kind of a bit difficult to talk about, it's just, or maybe in my life I've just not heard it. There's not a lot of encouraging conversation like that. So I'm like having it with myself. Oh, well. And what I'm getting back to now is when thinking of all that, it makes it easier for me to detach, I think, from not reality, but detach from what is not mine, or not the way I feel about things, or just identify how I feel about things at all. That's it's just really important to do, like, especially when you're trying to work communally, or you're trying to go outside your own comfort zone or anything like that. It's like there will be situations and things that occur, and the balance that we hold will be measured by our own response. Earlier today, are you going to get defensive and hate the person that's, kind of offering up these ideas or opinions that oppose yours? Are you going to hear them out? You're going to be like, okay, I can see it. You're going to like not take it personally. You'll be like, wow, I hadn't thought of it like that before, or whatever. Not to say that one way is right and one way is wrong. That's up to you to feel it out. And I think it's a great, valuable emotional tool of some kind, or hypothetical situation that it's a bit balancing for me. It's a way to like ground and know where the heck I'm at all, especially if I care a lot about the situation of the person or anything, because then, oh God, it's like, well, yeah, whatever you say is right. I just want you to be happy. And that is the most devastating thing that I think anybody could do, is to silence themselves for the purpose of making everybody else happy, because that will fail every time. That will fail every time. You can do absolutely everything in the world for somebody else, and there's still the likelihood or possibility that they will wake up feeling cranky the next day. And